Kia ora, good morning. I'm Bridie Whitten, a political reporter with Stuff, and I'm joined here with our Deputy Prime Minister, Carmel Sepuloni. Carmel, thank you so much for coming here today.
Kia ora, Bridie.
So first question I wanted to ask you, so we've got teachers striking today, thousands of them striking. They say they want better conditions, pay to match the cost of living, better student-teacher ratios. As a former educator, what is your message to them?
The absolute message is that we as a government value our teachers, we value all of those people working in our education sector. I think we demonstrated that value in 2019 with what I believe was a $1.2 billion investment. But clearly there are still some terms and conditions that the teachers are wanting addressed. And so we'll continue to negotiate with them, and I'm sure we will land at a place where the situation's resolved.
Yeah. What would you say to parents who just don't understand how it's got to this point? Like, what are the pressures here?
Well, look, you know, when we took over government in 2017, they had gone 9 years without their terms and conditions being addressed at all. And so there's been pressure on us as a government to respond, and we've tried to, but clearly we haven't got to where the teachers would like us to. And so these are ongoing negotiations, and we hope to have them settled and sorted as soon as possible.
Okay. On Stuart Nash, so yesterday, not a good day. Who should be the next police minister?
I'm certainly not going to give my views on that. That is a decision for the Prime Minister. That is something that he'll be thinking through. You know, he will make the right decision. There's no shortage of talent within our caucus and within our group of ministers already as well. And so he will make the right decision, and I'll back him on it.
What sort of attributes do you think he should be looking for in a police minister now?
Well, you know, absolutely someone who understands how the policing system works, that has the confidence to engage with the police and the structures around that. They have to be really good communicators, because there's often questions that come up with regards to the justice system and with regards to police and decisions that are made. And whoever is the minister has to be able to communicate clearly with the public with regards to anything that is happening in that area.
Yeah, and I guess know the cabinet rules.
Know the cabinet rules.
Yeah. Should he lose his other portfolios?
No, and the Prime Minister's been very clear that the breach of conduct is in regards to this particular area, but Minister Nash is a very passionate and hard-working minister. He's certainly passionate about the portfolios that he's got, and the Prime Minister has made the call. He's made a mistake with regards to this particular area, but he can continue on with his other portfolios and as a minister.
Because you must know Stuart Nash pretty well by now. You entered Parliament at the same time. Has this been quite disappointing for you personally?
Oh look, you know, people make mistakes and there's repercussions for those mistakes, and clearly Stuart has acknowledged that he has, and the implication has been that he's lost the policing portfolio. He's still a friend, he's still someone that I work with very closely and have worked with for the better part of 15 years. You know, he made the decision to resign. He accepted that he made a mistake, and these are the implications when you make mistakes within this system.
Is it sort of distracting to lose a police minister at this time, months out from an election?
Oh look, no one wants to see this type of thing happen, but there will be a replacement. We will be able to, and are already getting on as government, and things move very swiftly when these things happen. And so, Minister Nash will continue with his other portfolios and continue doing a great job with them, I'm sure.
Yesterday was March 15. How did you commemorate yesterday?
I think alongside parliamentary colleagues, just very quietly, a time of reflection on what has occurred. Obviously, it is one of the darkest memories for all of us as New Zealanders. I think we will all remember where we were at the time that this happened, and hopeful that given some of the work that's underway, particularly the work being led by Minister Radhakrishnan, will lead us to a place where we don't ever have to confront this type of situation again.
Does your party's focus on bread and butter issues stretch to covering, you know, misinformation and protecting people from hate speech?
Well, I mean, we've made decisions around hate speech, which is to wait for the Law Society's advice on that. I think that's really important. We want to make sure that we are listening to the experts with regards to what needs to be done and how it's done, rather than determining that with our own views and opinions as politicians. That doesn't mean that it's not important to us. What is important to us is getting it right.
Yeah. So you're the Minister of Social Development, obviously. Looking at cyclone recovery, huge task ahead. Is there any specific aspect of that which troubles you the most or keeps you up at night?
There's so many parts to what we've experienced with the weather events, whether it be access issues for people, the silt that's on their properties, their ability to get on and live in their own homes because the damage that's been caused. What I'm really cognizant of, because I've got more of a kind of social view and responsibility with regards to what's happening, are things like the immediate social impacts, groups that may have been disadvantaged already that will be further disadvantaged because of the fact that they're going through the impacts of this. Also the psychosocial impacts. We know that previously, perhaps even times like with the Christchurch earthquakes, it can take between 5 to 10 years for people to recover from the psychosocial impacts of an event like that. So we have to be mindful of all of that. But there is so much to this, and actually it's very difficult just to focus on one siloed area because everything has to be worked on in conjunction to ensure that kind of well-being and the social side of people and the mental health side of people is actually being addressed.
Yeah. So what do you make of criticism levelled at your Prime Minister, for winding back some policies in the climate sort of space, when it looks like our climate woes are really just beginning?
Well, there's so much more that's still happening in that space. He's made decisions based on what the priorities are right now. Also, what is achievable in this time, and some things I think were just taking longer than what was anticipated, and so rather than continue to invest money in those spaces, take it out and put it where it can be put to best use. We know that the biggest thing impacting people's lives at the moment is the cost of living. That comes through to us constantly and regularly from across the country. We would not be a responsible government if we were not listening to those concerns and responding accordingly.
So one of the things that National Act is likely to be doing is obviously attacking your record and Prime Minister's records as ministers. Are you proud of your record?
Yeah, I am. I look at, for instance, the welfare overhaul that I've been responsible for. That's been a $14.6 billion investment since 2017. We lifted benefits to a record level, actually addressing those 1991 cuts. We've done a range of other things in the welfare space. We've invested in education and the health system, areas that had been neglected by the previous government, and we've got houses being built in record numbers, another area that was neglected by the previous government. There's a lot that we've had to fix up since we've got in here, and we've made real traction with fixing up those issues.
I suppose, the economic background to these decisions has changed dramatically in the past few years. What do you make of sort of criticism that yes, you have made some substantial improvements to the amount of money beneficiaries can get, but it's just not enough?
Well, look, I think that people will always want more, and they're right to be aspirational and ambitious and demand more of the government. That is the general public's right to do that, and we absolutely accept that. I've never shied away from saying that we need to do more either. I can constantly see what's ahead and what we need to be doing. What I also recognise though is that we've been able to get on and do business as usual, achieve all of these things like the ones that I've mentioned, whilst we've dealt with some pretty significant challenges, including a pandemic, a terrorist attack, a volcanic eruption, and now some very severe weather events. And I think that is testimony to the effectiveness of this government.
What about getting rid of the Children's Commission? I mean, that was vehemently opposed. Look, it's happening in the next few months. We'll have the new board set up. What is your response to those criticisms? And that came from quite a broad range of places.
Well, some of the assertions are not quite right, and I think it was a very difficult thing to communicate. And I think in hindsight that we could have done a better job at communicating some of the decisions that were made. We certainly did put it out there, but I don't think for whatever reason it got the pickup that it should have right at the beginning. We're still going to have the Children's Commission. You know, we're going to have a board of commissioners as opposed to one person, but there will be one person leading that group, which will effectively be a Children's Commissioner. There's going to be more people sitting at the table. Expectation is there will be Māori, there will be people, at least one person who's got lived experience of having been in state care. We want to see that diversity of voices in that board so that we can make sure that all our children who perhaps feature more prominently sometimes in some of the negative stats are actually being represented well at the Children's Commission, on that Children's Commission, that board that's been set up. So it's not like it's been done away with in the way that it's been spoken of. We put the monitoring mechanism in place, and we've also given some responsibility to the Ombudsman for this.
Yeah, okay. So sort of former Children's Commissioner, current Children's Commissioner, Save the Children, Amnesty International, Human Rights Commission, they've got it wrong?
Well, I think there were difference of opinions, and I've certainly spoken to some organisations, including one organisation that advocates for children that are in care, and they've been working closely with the Independent Children's Monitor, and they say that it's been really constructive and really effective. And so time will tell. The most important thing is that the way we've set up the new system, that it works for children, and so we can argue about how it might work best, but ultimately we need to make sure that the system is working, and that was the intent behind this. Yeah.
Has the cyclone and recovery, has it changed your priorities for the next few months heading into the election?
Well, I think that the priorities that we've set, they've been very clear by the Prime Minister, that is the economy, that is cost of living, and making sure we're addressing bread and butter issues aren't necessarily mutually exclusive by some of the priorities that come with the weather events that we've experienced. And so they're not necessarily at odds, but helping the families that have been affected get back on their feet and be able to live the lives that they're used to living is going to be really important. And so we do have to prioritise all of the support and assistance that's going to be needed for those particular regions impacted by the weather events.
Yeah. Just back to the polls. So what is the plan if your popularity starts falling again, if Labour's popularity starts falling?
We don't plan for that. We're encouraged by the recent polls, but we do know that we are 6-7 months out from an election, and anything can change over the course of that time. It could go up, it could go down, but what we have to look to is that election day result, because that's the only real poll that matters. In the meantime, we still have to get on with governing the country, so that's going to be the primary consideration, as well as proving to New Zealanders that we do have the ideas, we do have the best interest of New Zealand at heart, and we are the ones to take us forward so that we can get re-elected for another term. And I'm really optimistic that that's going to happen.
Yeah. Reflections on your last, but 8 weeks as Deputy Prime Minister, do you have any sort of broad reflections from that time?
Well, I certainly didn't come into the new year thinking that all of these things were going to happen, but after being made DPM, obviously off the back of that, we quickly ended up in a situation where we were confronted with some very severe weather events. That's really what's taken up my time. I've been particularly in Auckland on the ground in evac centres, supporting families and working alongside the community. It's quite nice to be back down here in Wellington in some ways, to try and get back into the rhythm of MP life. But you know, we've got a big year ahead of us, and my job is just to back up the Prime Minister. I keep saying I'm his work wife, and I'm there to support him.
So that's your sort of role as Deputy Prime Minister, support the Prime Minister. What is a day in the life of the Deputy Prime Minister?
Well, I fill in for the Prime Minister when he can't be there. Today, quite often on Thursdays, he'll be out and about, and so if there are any questions to the Prime Minister, then I get to take them, and so I'll be doing that today. If there are particular events that are really important but he can't get to them because of scheduling issues, given the demands on him, then I might be filling in for him there, like I did with the Pacific Leaders Forum. And so it is just to be that ear, to be that person that he can talk to back him up and be there to cover for him when he can't. And like I said, I'm like a work wife in many ways.
How do you think Chris Hipkins has done? What would you rank him out of 10
Oh, of course, I'd have to give him 10.
Your wife?
He's had a great start. He's been authentically himself too,
Yep.
which I think is really important.
Yeah.
He's made calls that a leader has to make. He's taken his caucus along with him. He's communicated them as clearly as he possibly can to the general public, and so I'm not going to give him anything less than a full score.
Okay, that's good. Just back to the floods, I suppose it's a unique situation because you're personally impacted by that, weren't you? You had flooding in your own home.
Yes.
I suppose, has politics changed when a lot of the massive issues that we're facing as a nation actually affect lawmakers personally? We've got pandemic, we've got floods, that's in your home. Does that change things?
I'm not sure because really I had flooding in my house,
Yeah.
which affected my whole downstairs. I still had an upstairs to live in, to be honest. I met families who lost everything and where they're still fearful of going back to their properties, or they're unable to go back to their properties. And so their experience is far more intense than what mine has been. But I certainly, when you talk to someone who has endured that, and you know the ongoing impacts are going to be there for quite some time, then I think you can't help but feel absolute empathy for that person and for the communities around them that have also been impacted. I don't really think it has anything to do with my own experience because, as I said, my experience is nothing compared to so many others.
Do you think politicians face a certain risk of like a sort of emotional burnout, I guess, there's all these horrific things that are happening and then, especially with the climate change, these are going to be happening with more regularity. Is there sort of a risk of, a level of burnout? Yeah,
I think there is actually, and I think it's really important that politicians do care, that they are engaged, that they do know what's going on, and that they feel it. But at the same time, you've got to find reason to celebrate. You've got to take up those opportunities to experience the joys of life. But that's like everyone else. I mean, you could be experiencing something absolutely horrific in your own life, and there's got to be something positive you can turn to be able to find that balance, to be able to get on. Yeah.
On one of your other roles, Associate Foreign Minister in the Pacific, how do you want to sort of fill that role? What's it going to look like for you?
Yeah, so absolutely taking that relational approach. Not only am I a Pacific person, clearly, but also I really value the fact that we as Aotearoa New Zealand are a Pacific nation, living amongst other Pacific nations, that our Pacific region is of the utmost importance. And so the relational approach is going to be really important with how we can have free and frank discussions with other leaders and make decisions that are best for our whole region. So that's probably the primary thing.
Do you have any reflections? So you mentioned earlier you attended the Pacific Islands Forum in place of the Prime Minister a few weeks ago. Do you have any reflections from your time there? Did you enjoy it? But what was that relationship like with the other Pacific leaders?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And there's a number of Pacific leaders that I've gotten to know over the course of time. And so it was great to just be able to touch base with them and to catch up, as well as talk about everything that's important for our countries and the region. Good to meet some new leaders as well and to start forming a relationship with them. I thought, it was not only constructive, but there was quite a bit of humour chucked into the bilateral meetings that we had too, which is really important as Pacific people when we're engaging. And I thought that actually the Pacific Leaders Forum is really well placed at the moment. Obviously, Kiribati has just come back, and everyone is of the view that we need to be strong and united as a region and between leaders.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that unity, family element. So, I mean, what is New Zealand going to do? Or are you interested at all in how we actually support the Pacific and sort of maybe stop pilfering cheap labour from the Pacific?
Well, the vast majority of feedback from Pacific leaders is that they value the RSE scheme. Yep. There are a couple of countries that are doing their own reviews of this scheme, as are we, because we want to make sure that it's working for everyone. The public comments by one leader in particular has been more about how they ensure that they are they are in a position where the right people are coming, because there's some decisions that are made on their end too, and there are some concerns that maybe they're losing some of their workforce. So those are decisions for those independent countries. There's certainly no shortage of offers for RSE workers from across the region, and I think it's important that nations do review it at different points to make sure it's working for them. So there's no risk to our RSE scheme, and as I said, the leaders that I spoke to were really positive about the RSE scheme that we have in place, the terms and conditions for their people that are coming to New Zealand and how well they're looked after.
Okay. Last question.
Okay.
What do you like to do in your spare time?
Oh, so spare time, it really is, this is very boring, but it is spending it with family. I mean, as a politician and many working parents, you don't get the opportunity to hang out with your kids and your partners very often. And so when there is spare time, very boring, but I'm hanging out with them.
Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister. So I'm Bridie Whitten, political reporter with Stuff, and that was our Deputy Prime Minister, Carmel Sepuloni. Thank you so much for watching along. Ka kite anō.